little light on there.
Okay.
I am in the Ephrata Borough Hall in the council meeting room with Mayor Ralph Mowen, and it is the
Today is the 16th.
16th. Oh, geez, where'd the month go? 16th of August in 2012. Mayor Mowen, when were you first elected mayor?
I'm in my 19th year.
So you would have followed Lloyd Gerhardt?
Oh no, there were several mayors in there.
Oh,
between.
there were.
Yeah,
okay.
there was. Clarence Bond was in there.
Oh yeah, right.
Kenny Zimmerman was in there.
That's right.
I think that was it for
just
for
the
that,
two.
and then those two.
And they weren't there very long.
Clarence didn't fill out a full term. Kenny was there, I think, 2 terms.
And Lloyd Gerhardt was there forever. I mean,
Lloyd was mayor for 25 years.
As long as, my growing up
years.
All through my growing up years, Lloyd Gerhardt was
I don't
there.
have as many years as mayors that he does, but I have more years in local government. Because prior to becoming mayor, I was on council for 14 years.
Okay. Is that the usual way it goes?
No, not
Kenny
really.
was on council.
Kenny was on council and became mayor. Lloyd was never on council.
Lloyd Gerhardt never?
Clarence was never on. Clarence Bond was never on council. But
professionally, you were a banker.
yes.
Specifically security, right?
Well, I actually went through just about everything in banking. I
really?
started out as a loan officer and went up through branch management to regional management. And then during that time, when I was a regional manager, they decided that one of my ancillary duties should be in the field of bank security.
Really?
And that kind of evolved over a few years to where I became the director of security as the bank grew.
And that was with Susquehanna.
That was Susquehanna.
Now, Susquehanna wasn't when you started, right?
When I started out, it was Farmers National Bank of Lidditz.
Okay. And that was the mother bank for Susquehanna?
That was the mother bank of Susquehanna. When I started, there were 3 offices with assets of around $47 million. When I retired in April of this year, there were roughly 250 offices with assets of just shy of $16 billion.
Wow. If I remember correctly, it was investment in Park City that set that bank really going, right?
Well, not so much really going, but I was actually hired when they were building Park City to work in that office.
Oh, the Park City office.
I only worked there for a little less than a year when I was transferred over to the Lancaster Shopping Center office, which was the first bank in Manheim Township.
Oh, really?
There at that Lancaster Shopping Center.
Well, I remember for years Susquehanna was the only bank in Park City.
Yeah. Well, when we first went in there, we had a lease clause that prohibited any other banks. I think it was for 5 years.
Yeah, and they were the primary backers of that. Anyway, in your professional practice, is there one core belief which you've held, which would be your anchor in your practice?
I've kind of held the feeling or belief throughout the years that as a manager, I would not ask anybody to do something that I myself would not do.
Okay.
As far as a moral or legal aspect. I would never ask anybody to violate any kind of law or regulation, and I would not ask them to try to perform any deed that I myself wouldn't do.
Right now, internationally, bankers are going through a kind of trial, shall we say? I mean, it's a challenge. And many of those bankers would take exception to that, I think, because a lot of the underlings are doing things to make, I think Lehman Brothers would be an example. Wasn't it Lehman?
Lehman Brothers was.
Yeah, it was an example where it was clawing to the top and everything be damned. If I come to you as a fellow banker and I say, look, you're going to wind up getting nowhere doing that, how do you respond to me? Or how do you respond to someone who is your senior who comes to you and says, look, I want you to do this?
It's funny that you would ask that, because in my career, I actually did have some people that thought that I was a little too conservative, and that I was not going to progress. Mm-hmm. And my answer to them, quite frankly, was, if I can't put my head on the pillow at night and go to sleep with a clear conscience, then I failed. And I can't say that I always sleep well, but there are other reasons.
Yeah.
And for someone, and I've had colleagues through my banking career who basically had that philosophy. Mm-hmm. And some of them went above me and went on, but I personally just wouldn't. How do you
work with somebody like that? I mean, this person's still a colleague.
True, it's a colleague, and what I tried to do in those instances was maintain a professional relationship, though my personal relationship with that person would not be the same.
Okay, so you would not have them over for dinner or take them?
No, and I wouldn't go out for a drink with them afterwards.
Yeah.
But in the work relationship, I would treat them professionally. But
in the shop, they were the guy that did this job, right? And
correct.
You respected that.
I put up with that, not necessarily respected after some of the shenanigans that some of them pulled.
Yeah. Where do you think banking's going? I'm off the subject now, but I mean, we're at a pivotal point here where we must make some decisions about our banking system. I mean, comparing Susquehanna and Ephrata National, for example, as two entirely different banking philosophies.
Yeah.
Which way are we going?
I hope that there will always be the place in the market for the small kind of hometown bank like Ephrata National is, because as banks get bigger, and I saw this through my career, as banks get bigger, there is a loss of a certain attitude towards customers. Big banks say, the customers are our primary reason for being, and our employees are our most valuable asset and stuff like that. But as banks get bigger, that kind of changes. When I got into banking, a philosophy kind of was, as a banker, you'll never get rich, but you'll never be laid off. And that is not true anymore.
You will get rich.
Because you definitely can get rich, and you definitely can get laid off.
Oh, they lay people
off. Oh, my gracious. In the last merger that I was involved with.
Oh, of course, mergers, you now have double people.
Yeah.
Right.
With the last merger that I was involved with, the consolidation of the two banks led to the closing of 25 offices and over 300 people losing their jobs.
Now, what was that last merger?
That was the Tower Greystone.
Greystone up.
Yeah.
That's right. They built a little bank up here, and now it's empty.
Right. Well, actually, there's two banks out there. That the one across the street, which is now Jonestown.
Too, yeah.
Well, that was Blue Ball, which was obtained by Susquehanna through the Community Bank merger.
I see.
Which was only a couple of months prior to the Greystone Tower merger.
Yeah.
And
so that's why those two banks closed.
Right.
I often wondered about that.
Well, because Susquehanna had the Lincoln branch there.
Right.
Where they spent quite a bit of money to renovate that. Mm-hmm. And then...
well, Susquehanna had the one at the Sharp Shopper.
Yeah.
The one at Lincoln, and then the one here in Ephrata.
Well, they had the one in Ephrata, and they had one up at Wise.
Oh, that's right, there's one at Wise too, so there were 5.
There would have been 5, so they made the decision to close that one at Sharp Shopper, and then when the Greystone, they closed that one.
And then the one here in Ephrata is
They
closed
closed
now.
the one down here in Ephrata. Actually, there was also the one in Walmart. There was a small mini bank in Walmart.
Yeah, I'm aware of
Which,
that, which is
they
why I
closed.
considered closing my accounts at Shop, but that's another story. Have now I'm going to leave it on. Have I ever told you why I still deal with Susquehanna? I had an experience that will attach me to Susquehanna Bank for the rest of my life.
Oh, well, that's good.
I had a young man who was had been adjudicated in Philadelphia as a very young man, and was in their juvenile justice system until he wound up at the Bethany Children's Home in where is it? Over in Berks County. Anyway, yeah, he was an orphan. His mother was living, but wound up in my class. We befriended him. He wound up almost like a son. Mm-hmm. I took him to his first job ever. Now, he was in my electrical class. I took him to his first job ever with a guy I worked for in the summers. And the deal was I'd work for him if he'd hire this kid for the summer, and he said, sure, he needed that. So this kid gets his first paycheck, and he is just about burst. I mean, this is a real, honest to God, I earned this paycheck. So I take him to the Susquehanna Bank branch in at the Lancaster Shopping Center. You probably know it well.
That's the one I was in that office for 13 years.
And we walk in, and I put my check down, and I deposit it. And then he comes up, endorses his check, smiling ear to ear, lays it down. The woman looks at it and says, I won't take this. Same check, same employer. I won't take this. Why not? I don't trust you. Blood kicking. I said, ma'am, I just cashed the same check. I have an account here. I will speak to this check. I won't cash it. I said, the kid's black. I said, look, I will guarantee that check. I won't cash it. I went, give me the check. Walked back to the manager. She looked at the kid, looked him up and down like this and said, we won't cash it. Steam.
Yeah.
So we went around. It was on the Commonwealth Bank or something like that. They were in another bank. So we went over. This kid just deflated. So we went over to the branch that the check was written on, whatever it was, and he got his money. But the kid was still. So I went down. I wrote a letter, president of the Susquehanna Bank. Then I went down to the Ephrata branch here. And I told them the story, and they said, the both of them have been suspended without pay. And they wrote, the president of your bank wrote that kid a letter apologizing for the, I don't know, that took guts, to do that. I mean, he wouldn't have had to, because it was legitimate. The kid didn't have an account. It was on another bank, but this was obviously a case where somebody needed a little sensitivity training, and they took. The fact that the bank wrote that letter to that kid who since has graduated from Stevens Trade and is now runs an electrical department at a major company.
Oh, wow.
The kid was a real success. So anyway, Ralph, thank you very much. I hate to bother you with my stories at the end,
but that's fine. No,
really, I think you work for a good organization.
Oh, I have nothing but good to say. I mean, they treated me very well over.
Yeah, and I think I am suspicious of big banks generally.
I know Rebecca.
You know Rebecca?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, good.